Welcome to Feminist Founders, a podcast that explores how to create a more equitable world through entrepreneurship. I'm your host, coach and journalist Becky Mollenkamp. Feminist Founders is a listener-funded podcast. Your contributions enable me to continue bringing you these important conversations without corporate advertising. To support the mission, head to feministfounderspodcast.com and sign up for a paid subscription. The link is in the show notes. Now, on to today's show. This is definitely one of my favorite episodes, and I really mean it because I am just a hardcore fangirl for Allison Davis. I recommend her all the time. I'm constantly telling people about her. I am an evangelist. I'm always telling people about her monthly sales roundtables, so I'm telling you as well. You should attend them. They're amazing. And Allison is amazing. I hope this episode gives you a little flavor of why I think Allison's so amazing and why those monthly sales roundtables are definitely worth that hour in your calendar. Allison is going to talk to you today about sales, but not, as she calls it, stale, pale male sales. The way that we are used to learning about sales, the stuff that makes us all feel icky about sales. If you're wanting to do things differently, and hope you are because you're listening to this podcast, then Allison's the person for you because she's the founder of Sales Done Differently. That should tell you right there. She is trying to do things different. It's a consultancy. She focuses specifically on founder-led sales, meaning owners, founders who are doing their own sales and who are selling services to other businesses. So B2B sales of services, typically into clients that are larger corporate clients who are paying larger money. So I hope you really enjoy it. Just to give you a little of her bona fides, Allison's clients have sold millions of dollars in services to organizations like Charles Schwab, Gartner, Planned Parenthood, Levi's, Hulu, the ACLU, and more. Her background includes working for, as she mentions, National Geographic. She didn't mention, but also Time Out, which is an incredible publication for queer folks. Allison's amazing. I hope you enjoy this conversation. And also, if you're not a subscriber to the newsletter, make sure you subscribe to Feminist Founders newsletter because we had a bonus conversation about referral marketing done with integrity that was really valuable as well. So please enjoy this main episode all about sales, and then also make sure you get subscribed to Feminist Founders so you can learn about referral marketing. And here she is, the amazing Allison Davis.
Hi, Allison. How are you? Hi, Becky. I'm good. How are you? I'm great. Thank you for doing this. I'm so excited about it. Anyone who has ever spent time with me in a virtual call, a virtual setting, in a mastermind, in a networking call, anything else has probably heard your name by now because I'm out there constantly talking about what you do because I love the way you show up in the world. So I am so excited for us to talk about sales done differently. And before we get into that, I do want to know about your relationship with feminism. Well, as a listener of your podcast, I knew this question was coming, and I actually want to thank you for asking it. It's something that I'd like to think about more, honestly. There's a lot of things I'd like to think about more and have time in our days and in our lives. My relationship with feminism has always been, this is the best I could come up with, is that my relationship with feminism is always something I've been constantly regarding. It has felt in my younger years, in high school and in college, I was so full of myself and big visions and dreams, and I was so righteous, and I felt like I knew how things should be done. And the feminism that was around me didn't have a lot of respect for. The feeling has changed slightly in my old age. I was watching women, a generation or two older than me, working their way through institutions that didn't want anything to do with feminism. And they were doing their best. And for me, it was not nearly radical enough. And so I was pounding my fist on the desk and trying, it's not good enough, and that was my sort of brand of feminism then. And then as I got older, a little wiser, started talking less and listening more, realized that I was perpetuating that feeling for others, with the idea of intersectionality and saying, well, rightfully so, there are a lot of feminists out there pounding their fist on the desk because of what I'm perpetuating. And so it's sort of been this thing that I just keep regarding and keep trying to peel the layers back, and intersectionality as a whole, and also my own as a queer person, a femme identifying person, a fat person. It's just this never ending thing that I'm trying to remember to regard with some thoughtfulness and curiosity and conviction more days than I don't.
I love that answer. And I think it's important for us. This actually makes me think in the future, I should ask, what's your relationship with feminism today? Because it is, you're right. It's every day. It changes, doesn't it? As we learn more, as we grow, as we have fewer fucks to give. All of that.
And as I just continue my journey as a white privileged human, I try to remember how I felt when I was feeling not seen, not heard, not respected. I was actually telling my partner this morning a story. I went to a small Catholic college, and I could tell you a million stories about some BS that was going on. But there's this one in particular, if I may, which was at some point during my tenure there, they decided that they were going to put a women's center on campus. Now, when this is the 90s, early 2000s, when you think women's center, I'm thinking liberal, we got condoms everywhere, we have got information about, safe sex, dental dams. It was like, you take care of your body, Planned Parenthood, like all the things that I was living for. But that's not what that women's center was going to be. There was going to be none of that, stated, unequivocal, none of that. No LGBTQ plus, nothing. And I had a college radio show at the time called Bitchin' Radio, a feminist radio program. And me and my radio partner, we just started saying, call it what it is. It's a Catholic women's center. Nope, no tea, no shade. Do not, though, for the 17-year-old who I was looking for my fit. By the way, how are we letting 17-year-olds decide where they go to college? I clearly needed some guidance.
I was a 17-year-old who thought she knew enough to meet her forever partner and get married.
Hey.
Not please, we do not know anything, but we think we know everything at 17.
We know. I suppose if anybody had tried to tell me, maybe I wouldn't have. Yeah, that's fair. Long story short, we were just saying, call it a Catholic women's center, because we don't want those 17-year-old young humans we don't want them to get the wrong idea that this is a place that they can come for information about their bodies, about their health, and be supported. And a few weeks after our crusade began, a professor I had never met before, who was the feminist on campus, she had written books, was waiting outside my classroom when I left a course or a class. And she kind of got me. I remember being pinned against the wall. I am a very dramatic young person, but not really. She did kind of corner me though. And she said, "Are you Allison Davis?" I said, "I am." And she said, she implored me to stop saying, call it a Catholic women's center. And we all know where this is going. It's because her generation or brand or whatever of feminism was, we have to small change. Don't make too much noise. Get in, be polite, infiltrate from the inside out. And that wasn't good enough for me. And I suppose what my feminism now today is, instead of just continuing to tell that story self-righteously, is to be curious about who's looking at my brand of everything, of feminism, of queerness, of, how I show up in the world, my brand of sales, and who's shaking their fist at me, rightfully so. And how can I see how I am now cornering people in hallways after class and doing a similar thing that I don't want to become.
I like where that ended, because I thought you were going to say, but now I understand her and I'm in her shoes, which is great because I was like, man, the older I get, I think I went a similar journey, overly righteous at the young age, as we all are, such idealists.
Yeah.
Then I went through this period of no, maybe change really needs to be small. And we got that whole journey of fighting from within and incremental. Maybe this is the way to do it. I started to kind of believe those things. And for me, it's now the older I get and the fewer fucks I have to give. Thank God, menopause. I love you. I am just of that place of, I can't believe I ever went down that path. And now I am not righteous, but as invested in radical change as possible.
That's right. I was lucky in that time also to, my small Catholic college was right down the road from a larger university that thankfully had a few other things going on. And I remember hearing Les Feinberg speak and saying, listen, for the queer movement, trans movement, it's always been, the buttoned up professional white privileged folks who are at I'm paraphrasing, but, at the negotiating table for us. And to be however old I was, 19 or 20 or something, and to hear Les Feinberg say, but you got to remember, you are only as strong as the people on your picket lines, and look at who those people are and hear what they're saying, hear how loudly they're saying it. And so yeah, I'm right with you. And I actually feel like that's a really nice segue into sales, because I know that you have said that sales have always been, or have historically been taught by white men, as has almost everything, right? And as you're saying in that same way of like, it's this historic, who has been holding the keys and who has been the one teaching us and telling us how to show up. And with sales, it's no different. And what has that meant for how sales is anti-feminist, how it goes against the way you have shown up in the world?
Yeah. Oh boy.
And I know there's probably a lot there, so maybe we can just start to peel back the onion a little.
It's a big question. Sometimes because of who I'm privileged enough to surround myself with, that I can kind of forget about maybe how it is still being perpetuated. I think there's a story I get to tell myself in my own privilege that it's getting better all around me all the time. And just this morning, I opened up YouTube and got served an ad that was a white sales bro on a whiteboard who had written a bad follow-up, to follow up on a proposal or whatever. And then his alternative. There's not enough time in this entire hour that we're going to get to spend together to talk about the pillars of white supremacy and the absolute BS that this guy was still spewing right on a YouTube. So how does it manifest? Well, there are a million ways, and I think that we'll keep uncovering it during our conversation, but I'll start with this. Manufactured versus organic and true, right? So the stale pale male sales playbook, I wish I could credit whoever said that to me first.
Too. I love that stale pale male.
Stale pale male sales playbook, is manufactured urgency. It is exploiting pain points and fear and pushing and the urgency and the perfectionism and the written word and it's all of those things. And it is all push, push, push. As opposed, listen, my customers are subject matter experts who sell mostly into larger organizations, nonprofits or big companies, startups, whatever. You don't have to manufacture anything. There's enough problems and pain and challenges to go around. Like if we can just do the shift away from manufactured, agitating, exploitative BS and do a shift over to what is true for you right now. You don't have to manufacture anything. There is organic pain. There are organic challenges that need attention. And organic urgency is the biggest thing I wanted to say. And, oh my God, you're going to have to be like, time out, please allow me to speak on my own podcast.
No, I love it. It brings me right to something else I wanted to talk about.
Please.
Because I, was perusing your blog to do a little research before this interview. I always like to look what people have done.
I may have been on YouTube watching your thing, which is why it's hilarious that I got served that ad. I was like,
well, that makes me sad that ad would come up on my... Right.
What would make you think I would want to watch this guy?
It does seem like quite the waste of money that they would be advertising. Anyway, very big miss. But you had a blog post about making your buyer feel safe. And in that blog post, I'm here for safety as much as we can help to create safety, or at least safer spaces in all places. But one thing I noticed was that it talks about sales psychology and the tall, pale male.
Stale pale male, and they're often tall. They could be tall or short. Don't let the short ones fool you.
I couldn't remember the first word. Stale pale male, which obviously I love the rhyming. So the stale pale male, I think what I'm hearing you get at, and what most of us have felt over the time is they have had the same information that you have had about sales psychology, And they are using it in a way that is to manipulate people into performing the way they want, which, by the way, we also know that stale pale males have been doing this in all sorts of places, not just in sales, right? But so how do you go about using sales psychology and avoiding, because I think that's the thing that comes up for people. We have all felt manipulated. We have all felt used. We have felt these false sense of urgency. We feel all of this stuff. And I think that's what makes it so uncomfortable for so many of us then to approach sales, because we think as soon as somebody starts talking to me about sales psychology, I think I don't want to manipulate people. Like you feel like it's like you're telling me now I got to use these tools to trick people. So how do you start to like make those differences for yourself? Because it's tough.
Okay. I think using a real life example of a salesperson I had the unfortunate occasion to run into, and then sharing how we might be able to do something differently. So I, at some point, it's a long story, but I'll just say I ended up on a sales call with arguably one of our world's largest, most well-known coaches. And he's a guy.
Folks, I think we can read between the lines.
And how I ended up on that call is another story. But here's how that call went. First, you have to fill out an application, and I'm filling it in to the best of my ability. And it says, what are the 3 things you want to work on? And I know that the first 2 had to do with my business and growing my business. And the third one had to do with my health and my weight. It's like my overall health, moving my body more, things like that. I feel so sad for even the person I was like 7 years ago doing this. I'm like, oh, girl, come on. But I was actually just doing a little bit of research. I wanted to know what they were doing, but it ended up like really being a traumatizing experience. So I fill this thing out. There's some, appointment checker. We get on the call. It is the very definition of the sales guy you don't want to meet. And here's what he did. I had very legitimate business, goals that I had put in that form. And then that one about my body. And which one do you think he went to first and spent the entire time on?
Gee.
The one where there's just shame, more apt to be pouring out of my entire body, right? And he stayed there. He asked how much I weighed. He went through his entire NLP. By the way, I'm gonna get hate mail, but neuro-linguistic programming used by these big coaches and other places to teach sales is disgusting. He did his whole thing. I could see him do it. I'm like, all right. And when I said, and he presented the coaching package. And when I said, well, I'm going to need 24 hours to think about it, he said, well, then you're not serious. And I maybe had a couple choice words for him. And that call ended when he said, well, I hope you don't wait too long, because I'd rather try to help you before your partner, he didn't say partner, he said husband, of course, is leaning over you in a hospital bed while you die of a heart attack. No joke.
No, that is traumatizing. And I'm sorry you went through it.
Thank you. It was awful. I wasn't there for
I suspect most listeners also can, I bet it immediately pulls in something for so many of us that even if it's not that story, it's something like it. And unfortunately, I know we're not talking specifically about health and wellness, but the medical industry is notorious 100%. For these same shaming techniques. So I think most of us can relate in so many ways.
Absolutely. Now, not that I want to help this guy or think about this guy much more for my entire life, right? But let's think about how you can work with a buyer's psychology and not be manipulative. And maybe it's not, everything is about psychology a little bit, because if it's about human interaction and what container you are setting up and what your goal and objective is, this is all about psychology a little bit. And I'm not a psychologist and I haven't studied this a lot, but let's look at what he could have done instead. He could have said, you put these 3 things on this list, right? Because you're a coach, Becky. This is so much about this is coaching, which is letting the other person lead. Let the other person tell you what's important. You don't have to put it in flashing lights or make that. Ask me to prioritize. And hey, man, if you want to get curious, hey, I noticed there was this 3rd thing and we're almost out of time. And I noticed you haven't brought it up. I'm curious if there's anything about that you want to share. Or is there anything interesting that we could derive from you not talking about that? I'm okay with those things. I'm being invited to consider my own behavior. But I'm going to pause because I need my people who are listening to me to check me. But are you picking up what I'm putting down about the difference between that? We can still work with it as a piece of what's going on with you psychologically, but I'm not pushing. I don't think I'm inviting you to hold it up to the light if it's something you put out there in the first place.
I just think in so many things, to me, a lot of what feminism boils down to, I think a feminist approach to many things is consent.
Yeah.
And that is the piece I think can be so missing in so much of the traditional approaches to sales, to marketing, to all of the things, is the consent piece, which like you said, it's the invitation, right? It is the people-centered approach. It's the them-centered, not you-centered approach inside of a relationship. Yeah.
Yeah.
I do think that resonates.
Yeah. And I think it's also, it really is about, also think about the business model too, right? I try to remind myself that there are no bad business models. There are just bad practitioners of models. I have made some choices in my business that are right for me, which is I'm not a high volume, low touch gal, because the more my business model, again, it's not necessarily a bad thing, but the more my business model swings in that direction, the more tactics and pillars of white supremacy I feel that I would need to lean into in order to make that business engine go. And that example that I just brought to the table of that horrible guy, that's the worst possible case scenario of that business model. So I think it is also when you sit and you consider where I'm starting a business and how do I want it to grow, or I'm at an inflection point and how do I want to grow? For me, one of the biggest questions that always comes up is, what will that mean I've got to do? How will that change how I need to be, how much time I spend with people? And if it gives me too slim a margin there, I'm not doing it. That's for me.
Well, and that person who shall not be named is worth $500 million, I think more. But, and I think that's clear that his mission is very different. So if your mission is to grow that multi, like if you're shooting for billions, I don't know why you'd be listening anyway. Yeah. There's just nothing feminist about that to begin with. So we know that that's a bad actor, but the problem is so many of us get roped into it, and we buy into it because I want to reframe that, because again, that's even putting it back on me. Like, I made this choice. It's really not a choice. We are indoctrinated. It is put upon us from birth that is what we're supposed to all want. And the unpacking of that process is very hard. So it sounds like you've had this feminist streak, this activist side of you for a long time, and yet you were still very much a part of the same conditioning. We all were the same world. Yeah. I am sure that when you went out and started to do sales as you were doing it, I would imagine you probably also believed a lot of the stuff. So tell me how you unpacked that for yourself. Like, what was the turning point for you to say, wait a minute, this doesn't work. It doesn't feel good. And I don't want to keep perpetuating it.
I first have to say that I was very lucky in my career. I sold advertising, media, large event sponsorships for almost 20 years. And I wish I could say I did this with, total purpose. I didn't. I think I followed my gut. But I always worked almost exclusively for independently owned media. Even when I was with National Geographic, it was still that department was still part of the nonprofit before they sold to Fox, So it was always independently owned media. Toward the end, I would leave just as they announced a sale to a, like bigger conglomerate or whatever. And especially my first job, I'm so grateful for it. I worked at a newspaper that is still thriving to this day in Burlington, Vermont, owned by 2 women. And they were figuring sales out. And, sure, we would go to conferences and we'd hear that stale pale mail, kind of stuff but we really were figuring out what worked for us as a small company in a very specific community, which is Vermont in the United States of America. And I think I was really fortunate to have two women be my mentors in that, and that we were all figuring it out together. And I think when human beings get together to figure out what works, they actually do look at what the humans around them need and want and what makes sense for them, and we build it from there. So that was my foundation. Now, as I got into my career, I worked with a lot of great people. I worked with a lot of great women. And I want to say, I'm not trying to like, yes, I like people to like me, but I'm not trying to blow smoke up anybody's butt. They were all really fair, wonderful humans, by and large, but it's the model. And it's just what got passed down and passed down and passed down. Now I've lost your question. How did I disavow myself of any of that or get away from it? You know, the truth is I didn't for a long time. I mean, when you're an employee as a salesperson and as a woman and who has varying identities, you talk about consent as a buyer. What about consent as an employer or an employee rather? You know, I was given a list of all these big companies and I was told you got to go sell to them. I would walk in and if I got treated poorly, disgustingly, didn't matter. I still have to sell to that company. So I think it was really about how do I feel when I'm being asked to do this? What works and what doesn't work? And it really hasn't been until recent years, Becky, when I've met, you know, my communities and humans like you and really deeply listening where I can put names to things and to say, that's why I didn't feel good. And that's why that's never going to work for the engineer who's trying to sell engineering, you know, consultant work, or the DEIB consultant who left out of corporate because this was not going to be working and is trying to make work a better place. You know, those types of tactics and the high pressure and the urgency and the if they say this, then you say that, and there's no other script possible is not going to work for them. And so I think I always kind of, I mean, not to be self-congratulatory, I'm sure I did terrible things, but you know, it's like I always kind of did it my way. And now when I'm older and wiser, I feel like I'm able to put words and context to things and to be able to say, well, that's why that felt really uncomfortable and I didn't like it.
Yeah, it sounds like, I think for a lot of us, it's a running away from what doesn't feel good for a long time before you start running towards what does, because we don't know what it could be yet. We just know this ain't it. And so we're running from that. And then eventually I feel like you start to notice the other people who are running in the same direction and you start to help each other and learn from each other. Yeah. And then we're like, okay, this is what it could be. And when you start to get to that, here's what it could be place. Ooh, that feels really nice, doesn't it? Like it feels good to no longer just be like, I know it's not that, but I don't know what it is, to finally start saying, I know what it is. So let's talk about what it is. Your business or a DBA is sales done differently. That's the tagline on your website. That's what people talk about. What does it mean to you in as Cliff's Notesy version of it as you can get? What does that mean to do sales differently? Sales done differently.
Thanks for asking. It does mean to throw out the playbooks that don't work for you. And so it could as easily be called sales done individually. You know, it really is. I only work with subject matter experts. Some nice people say, can you come in and help my sales team? And if that sales team is traditional salespeople, they've been doing this for their career, my answer is no. I'd love to grab a beer with them. I don't want to get into a pissing contest about what works and what doesn't work, which is just generally what happens when we are in a room of salespeople. We're really skeptical when somebody wants to teach us something new, and I understand that. But sales done differently means really that there is not one way. And subject matter experts who take a huge leap and risk, especially if they are under-recognized human beings, to start a business. Most businesses fail. I mean, we've got to take a big old leap to do this. And when they try to follow somebody else's playbook, it fails miserably. Will their businesses work? Typically, yes, because when people leave their careers and start their own consultancies or agencies, they usually do so because they're really good at what they do. They've got good ideas and they have a network that will support them in the short term. They're not going to just fall right off of a cliff. They're not going to. They're going to survive for some time. But if they are trying to play by somebody else's playbook, I think we're getting into your territory, Becky. You tell me if I got it right. It's the energetics of that are going to crush your soul. And we can't have that because we need them to be out here in the marketplace, being themselves and doing
what's
things
not
differently.
Sustainable. And I see you talking about sustainable sales too, right? Exactly. You can do it for a while, but masking, because that's masking, and masking is an exhaustive behavior, and we can't do it over the long term. It's sometimes it's even a solution we need for safety, right? Psychological safety, physical safety to get us through a moment, but we can't do it permanently. No one can.
And so all of yes. Oh, let's get into that. I mean, it's like, there's do I want my sales to be led by feminism and like and some of these things that you like, yes, but really you want to know what my secret is that I am obsessed with efficiency. For busy subject matter expert business owners who are trying to also have a life somehow in here, the other playbooks have them running around doing about 1,000 things a day they don't need to do. And so like, I'm really driving toward efficiency so that there is more choice in your life, in the work you choose to do. And that I get, man, I'm in 3 different directions. I swear to God, the balls are in the air, Becky. I'm going to catch them. The first thing I'll say is that 2024 has been a hard year for service-based businesses. I mean, I think I can say that now confidently, like across the board. And what is the customers I have coming with me now and starting with me now, the thing that breaks my heart the most is them feeling like they've had to say yes to things that didn't feel aligned to save the business. And it's because they've been running around using somebody else's playbook for too long, throwing too much spaghetti, when really it's quality over quantity when it comes to lead generation, amount of activity you need to do. It's these things that's actually quite dialed in that we get to do that give us that renewable resource of doing the work that we want to do over and over in the world. And at the very heart of that, you said, what is sales done differently? It is without the platitudes and all of the things that come along with it. It really is about centering the client, which we hear all the time, but it's not centering the client and then manipulating the crap out of them, or centering the client, but then like shoving them into our own process and like sink or swim client. It really is about regarding the people or the organization sitting in front of you and getting really curious, not manufacturing the urgency, not then fear mongering, but saying what is actually going on with you, understanding the questions. It's really about, Becky, it's your skill set. The questions that you ask, the curiosity that you have, applying that, being really curious about these people, the organization, and then helping them gain some clarity about what that means. Where are they today, their current state? Are you clear on what that means for you and where you want to go? And giving them some authority to make a right decision to go forward, because you're coming to the table with a lens of expertise. And if you get their consent to share some of that expertise and to help them make a good decision, whether it's to work with you or not to work with you, everybody moves forward feeling really good and in integrity of that conversation. There's so many elements of that in the Stale Pale Male playbook. They're there. That's what gets really confusing about it. But it's doubling down on the humanity of it and the true listening of whether or not this is the problem they want to solve at this time, and if you are the best fit for that. And then however that shakes out, being really good with that outcome.
This is actually where I'm going to say it's not all just about the sales, that traditional sales playbook, and the psychology of it and all the bad things. Some of it is also, I feel like, and now I'm starting to speak from personal experience, but I think a lot of the clients you probably work with are similar as service-based people who also probably have our values aligned with you and with me, and who want to help people individually, right? Because they are not trying to sell. They're also not quantity kind of people. They're quality kind of people. So they want to they're probably also offering their clients a lot of very individual, custom kind of services. And very often people think what they want is that 1, 2, 3 step solution, right? Just tell me what to do. Tell me you can do it in 3 steps. This is what I need. Like, And they're receiving that from those traditional people coming in saying, all right, here's your problem. Here's how I'm going to solve it. Here's the 3 easy steps. And it can feel difficult to compete with that when you're showing up in this different way. And that's where I think it can also get tempting to kind of try and, instead of listening, asking questions, getting the consent, to sort of come in and bulldoze in that same way and try to ram your solution into some sort of 3-step solution, because it's not just because you're being told by the stale pale male folks that you should do that, but also because clients have been learning that same approach and are almost demanding it. So all of this is say, like, how do you deal with that when it's like, it's not, it's also tempting yourself to feel like, I'm going to lose the sale if I don't, because that's what they think they need.
Ooh. Oh my gosh.
Really big.
I mean, if we could solve this and sort of package it up in a 1, 2, 3 step, then we would.
There we go. Let's just do that.
Oh,
the
man,
solution is a 1 through 3 step solution.
I know. Oh my God. Well, listen, I'm not sure I have the exact answer, but I think here's what I'll say. Herein lies the rub, is that okay, well, pause, time out. You want to know my biggest soapbox is people giving advice or saying what is so without calling out who they're actually talking about or the business model they're talking about, right? I work with folks who sell premium consulting and services into bigger companies, right? And so hey, if you want to have $1 million business, God bless. And if you need $1 million business and the thing you sell is on average priced at $100,000, you only need 10 clients, right? So what my clients have in common is that they don't need a high volume of business typically. But what it also means, which is what you're getting at, I believe, Becky, is that they're helping to solve really complex problems. And so if we're going to have what I am suggesting we have, which is a really rigorous, honest, holding up to the light conversation, even with our largest Fortune 500 clients, it is in direct opposition of what we are taught you need to do in selling. And honestly, probably what a lot of us business owners, no matter what model you've seen, know works, which you tell me if I'm getting you right, Becky, is that you're saying we got to kind of keep the sales simple, even though we're fixing complex problems. And how the heck do we do that?
Yes. And when we have clients who are very accustomed to people showing up that way, and so they kind of go into that sales conversation expecting
step 1, step 2, step 3 is going to fix it for you. Easy, done and dusted, 30 minutes, make a decision. Yes or no, you in,
so when
you
you're
out.
Trying to challenge those norms with clients who are used to those norms, it feels like there could be a bit of a challenge there.
Yeah. Well, okay. There is. And I'm going to say, yes, that playbook is gross. And so those of us who are trying to do it differently, sales done differently or disrupt in any way, that puts us at risk potentially, right? So we need those people, especially the people who actually are aligned with what you and I are saying, to stop doing the stale pale male playbook, because it's hurting the rest of us who are trying to do it differently, right? So we really need you to stop. And we need you to help us sort of disrupt and change, because the issue is that buyers now expect that this is the right way to sell. So that's how they want you to show up. They don't know that I talk about this all the time. Are you showing up as a vendor, or are you showing up as a strategic partner in your sales process? Now, again, this is for folks selling complex services. Not everybody needs to show up as a big, thick and strategic partner if you're trying to sell a $5 widget. Like, that's a waste of your time. Know thyself and know thy business, right? But it's a real problem when buyers, my customers all the time, a lot of my customers sell services into people in culture, departments and divisions of corporations, large nonprofits, and they encounter the same thing all the time. A buyer who thinks they're going to get on a call and download my customer for 30 minutes. Here's all the problems. Here's what we need to fix. I've been taught and trained that I just need to come and dictate to you the problem we have, the solution we need. And you're going to then take everything I said in 30 minutes. You're going to do free labor for me for 2 hours, 2 days, or 2 weeks to put together a proposal. And you're going to send it back to me transactionally. I'm going to pitch you up against a bunch of other people I don't know, and I'm going to try to make the best decision. And because I don't know any of you, I'm probably going to make it on price alone. This is not good. So, Becky, what's the answer? I don't know, because two things are true at once. For them to want to choose us and come to the light, we need to show up without a 1, 2, 3 solution. We have to get our hands dirty. We have to understand what is true for them. We don't need to agitate. We don't need to manufacture, but we do need to help them determine, if they do not yet know, well, what is the consequence of just staying where you are? What's the consequence of doing the status quo? Is it really that bad? Oh, it's bad? Okay, well, maybe we're moving toward a healthy decision for you to make some changes. We need that. But if our buyer has learned all these bad habits from the old sales playbook, then they're coming just expecting 30 minutes and you're going to go put together a proposal and we're bing, bang, boom, done. So we actually have to shift their perception too. Last thing I'll say. Finish my original thought. I didn't say that I also strongly identify as an ADHDer, so God bless.
So do I, and I think most people listening probably do. So
I know. Okay, well,
I feel like I'm attracting people who are like me.
Along.
Right.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So the two things are true at once, and this is what makes sales, and especially in 2024, really, really hard. Two things are true. Your buyers, if you're a subject matter expert, really need you, and they need the best of you in that sales process. And also, they need to feel safe to buy. And a lot of humans equate safety with simplicity. So they have complex problems that need to be solved. We need to get our hands dirty in that complexity to see if we can actually really solve them. We don't want to sell people something that they don't need or wouldn't be a good fit for us. We need to get in the complexity. And also what's true is our most ideal buyers, our dream clients, the people my clients really want to work with, do sometimes equate this simplicity or transactional vibe of a sales process to safety. And that's a real problem.
Yeah. And this is not probably the answer, but because you want the sale. There is also this part of me that feels like sometimes what I have experienced with my work as a coach and trying to do things a little differently is sometimes it does mean I miss out on the sale.
Yeah.
And eventually they come back because that transactional experience ends up feeling transactional. It doesn't work. It didn't actually address what they needed because they were being put into a 1, 2, 3 step solution that doesn't work for them. That's not reassuring when you're like, I need sales now. Yeah. But I do feel like we can't let because I think sometimes people who try to do things differently also sometimes feel like I tried it, it didn't work. So I guess I just have to do this thing that doesn't feel good. And I do think this takes longer. Like I think this sales kind of process may take longer. It may not get you the quick wins, but I think it does get you the kind of relationships that then pay off in the long run. Is that you're giving me a thumbs up. So I feel like I'm on track.
100%. There is just, I think at least the business owners I run with, we are intentionally trying to stave off this sense of urgency that we, at least in my crew, we all seem to run with, right? This is the white culture we live in, saying urgency, and more and bigger and more, right? So I don't really have a problem with that. I'm okay. I'm okay with not bigger and more, but like the urgency still sticks with me. And what's true is exactly what you're saying, Becky, is that to build, again, in this business model of premium consulting and services, selling B2B, is that it does take time. It's a slow, there's like the slow food movement. Let's do the slow sales movement. Like it is right. Even if those people, if you love something, let it go, it'll come back. And when they come back, they will come back with all their peers. They will be your best mouthpieces. They will be your best referral, partners and things like that. The thing that I spend, if a group of my clients were here, I think they would agree. I spend the majority of my time and work with clients to help them understand one thing, that they're sending proposals too soon. If I teach one thing, it is to slow it down. And that can often be very confronting for a lot of reasons. I mean, from I don't know how you were raised, but I was raised to be very polite and to please people. And so that's, I'm trying to undo that all the time. And so if somebody says, I got 30 minutes, I'm going to download you, and then you send me a written, proposal back, I'm going to be like, oh, yes, ma'am, and do that dutiful thing. I'm a dutiful order taker, but that is being a vendor. And so to come forward and slow this process down and actually give value to the client while I'm sitting here understanding and really trying to help them assess if this is the right investment to make at the right time, I might have to get a little uncomfortable myself. And so I am asking my customers to really slow things down and get more of this information ahead of sending a proposal. To your earlier point where you said, hey, and if I do things my way, and they might go with that competitor that had the 1, 2, 3 solution, it is a-okay to say, you know what? That's okay. That just means I need some more volume in my pipeline, because the people who see me, who see the light, they're going to come to me. Those other people are going to go do something else for a year, and then they're going to come back to me. That is perfectly acceptable. It does put more work on your plate though, Becky, because then you got to fill your pipeline. What I want, if you were my client and this was the scenario, what I would be urging you to do and trying to find a way to help you operationalize is to ask a few more questions before you let that proposal go. I'm curious, how many folks are you talking to as a, potential partner in solving this challenge? And what are you seeing from them, if you don't mind me asking? What kinds of things are you hearing? How will you make this decision? Based on what criteria? Will you choose between me and this other, agency or human? I'm really curious about that, about what makes up your decision making. And something I learned from the 2 women that own the newspaper that I started with is, because I remember the first time I said it, and I think I nearly, you said I could swear on this podcast. I think I nearly shit a brick, because I really was really like, this seems impolite. And I was really challenged. My 25-year-old self was really challenged, was to say, hey, when after you have your meeting with this other agency, would you consider, I'm trying to remember how exactly I said it, my little phone in my little cubicle was, could we put another 20 or 30 minutes on the calendar? Because, there's so many choices out there, and I'll sleep better at night if I know that you're choosing between apples and not apples and oranges. And I got a great gift the first time I ever said that. The person said, that is so nice. Yeah, I would love that support. Thank you. And when my customers now start to pepper in more of these questions and specifically ask for more time or another call on the calendar to help them further clarify their options and to make a good decision and to really make sure that a scope of work is really what it needs to be so that they can, do internally what they need to do with it or whatever it is. I've never, not once, in serving hundreds of business owners at this point, had anyone come back and say, they laughed me out of the room. They shamed me for asking for more time. They said, what are you, nuts? Never, never. People are grateful for you to disrupt because they can feel that this process doesn't serve them. The quick 30-minute download, you send me a proposal, 1, 2, 3 solution, it doesn't work. They can feel it. And so if you have an opportunity, even if you have to step into a little bravery to slow things down, to offer more time in service of them in your sales process, do it. I think you'll be really excited about the results of doing it.
Let's talk about bravery, because as you're talking about some of that in that 25 version of you who's scared to say the thing, I remember a brief time in my life when I was doing sales and I had to do cold calling, which it's whatever. I know, not at all effective, but
no,
I remember the fear involved in that. And I think I would love to know from your experience with the kinds of folks you're working with, what percentage, if you had to kind of plot it out on a, on a chart, of what holds them back from sales success is, I don't know what I'm supposed to say, how I approach all of this, and how much of it is I'm scared shitless to do that thing, to say that thing, to show up that way. Like, how much of it is mindset versus tactics?
Oh, it's so much mindset. Because, I think to a certain point, it's tactics, right? If they're reading books or listening to stale pale mail, this and that, they know those tactics don't feel right, so they'll avoid them, right? But but even when I'm showing up and sharing tactics that do feel more aligned, I know it's mindset because it still can take, some time to get into a groove. And what I have found by and large, and I know that these are the people I attract, they're my people. What holds them back most of the time is an abundance of empathy and compassion for the buyer, often because they have been in the buyer's shoes. Not always, but my folks who run HR consultancies, they were top HR people. It's like, so they have been in these shoes. And so they are really worried about putting more time on their calendar, more work on their plate, the perception of more work. They're really sensitive to that. They want these humans to feel like, I'm here to take work off your plate, which is true, but they will do a better job of that and more quickly get onto the work of doing that, taking stuff off their plate, if they slow it down now. So it really is that perception of asking for more, centering myself instead of centering you, that holds them back from asking for what is best for everybody. Does that make sense? Asking for more time, it's like they're hesitant to do it. But when they say, hey, I have found that I can serve you better, more efficiently, if we meet one more time, are you up for that? Again, almost always a yes.
Well, and I love that you brought up empathy, and that empathy / people pleasing, because I think these things get lumped together for us, especially as
the nice
women.
Way of saying.
Yeah, exactly. But also, I guess where my head had gone, this may show a little more of my own personal fears, is the rejection, the abandonment. Like, that's my core wounding. I think for some other people, it might be something different. So that fear that you mentioned of like, what are they going to, like, if I ask this, are they going to laugh in my face? Even though evidence may point to the opposite, there's this feeling of like, how can I? And then I also imagine you have to help people learn to practice being quiet, leaving empty space, because we want to rush into solve, So it's there's just so much inside of that. So I just wondered, I assumed that a lot of this was probably also mindset. I don't know how much you work with people on that, or if you tend to give that out to more.
This is why I'm so glad that so many of my clients work with you. I mean, because we really are a good duo. I mean, I think I would hope that my clients would say, you've helped me with my mindset, but but I'm very happy to stay in my own lane and understand where my zone really is. It's to have that compassion for the mindset stuff, but also knowing that there are people like you who are better suited to do that deeper work. Sales is tactical and energetic in every minute of every day that you're doing. I mean, it just is.
Yeah. I'm sure there's more we could talk about there, but I also want to be mindful of time, because I wanted to ask you, because you talked about the pipeline. And I have a feeling, so I'm going back to this because I'm sure people listening were like, why didn't she say, yeah, that's my problem, I need a bigger pipeline? Because especially in this year, I think has probably helped a lot of people see that, like, my pipeline wasn't big enough. And it was okay when more people were saying yes, because they was still able to function. But now I'm realizing when fewer people are saying yes, I've got to have more people I'm talking to. And that building up a bigger pipeline can be very challenging for folks. And there's a lot of traditional ways that we're told to do it that don't feel good. I know, like, when I talk to people about your work, and this may not be how you phrase it, but I say your work is like relationship-based sales, because that's what it feels like to me. I see you saying yes, so okay, good. I'm glad I'm not saying it wrong.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, good. And so I think it looks different than just saying, get a white paper and download it from our website, and that's how we're going to get you on our email list, and then we're going to, right, I can see you roll your eyes. So yes. So when you talk about building up a sales pipeline, I really would love to talk about your roundtables. This is where I send people all the time. So if you've ever had a conversation with me, you probably already heard me tell you about Allison's monthly roundtable. It is such a wonderful model, I think, but I would love to hear from your side of it, because I'm only seeing it from the user side. I want to know if it actually works for you. I'm guessing it does because you continue to do it, but you're giving. It is an hour of giving. There's barely a pitch. Sometimes you kind of like remind people, hey, I'm here.
If I've got something going on that is timely, sure. Yeah.
Or like, hey, if we might be a good fit, like, here's how you get hold of me. But it's really just truly an hour of you showing up, educating, coaching, asking questions, delivering, information that's interesting or timely or whatever. How did you start with that model, and why does it work, or does it work, or how does it work for the pipeline piece?
Yeah. Okay. So here's what I'll say. And if I could shout this from every rooftop, beware of any business advice unless the person is telling you how it works for your model. a one-to-many, a one-to-one model, a content, I'm a content creator based model versus I am a high touch, service provider model. I've got a course. If there's so much advice is bad because it doesn't fit your business model. So I really want to get that out there. And anytime you are considering hiring a consultant, a coach of any kind, ask them, how does your work differ or work or not work for various business models? And just watch their face, anyway, don't get me started. That's a whole other show about people giving advice.
I know, and there's so
on
many
other
things we could
people's
talk
business
about.
models. I know.
We're not going to get to half of what I want to talk about today, but let's talk about that.
So filling the pipeline, here's the thing. Remember, my customers, right? The business model is low volume, premium pricing, right? Selling to more mature buyers. These are, folks who are used to solving complex problems in their organizations and used to buying solutions for that in some manner. They don't need a lot of customers. Some need 10 new customers a year or less. And so when we wake up on that fateful morning when our network seems to have dried up, it's 2024. There are fewer organic inbound leads coming your way, less referrals. People are taking longer to make a decision. They're scrutinizing budget. They're kicking the can down the road. They're acting out of their own best interest. We're in a lot of trouble. And all of a sudden, a lot of business owners in 2024 had to look in the mirror and say, I have to go proactively develop a lead today. And that's a horrible realization. I've just been doing that since I was 22 years old. So it's just experience, with old wizened experience at this point that it's like, I'm okay with that. That's a really hard place to be. And it causes panic. And what do we do when we panic? We ask everybody we know, or we Google in the middle of the night. We doom scroll. We try to figure it out. And all of the advice out there says something similar, which is, well, you got to post more on LinkedIn. For $3,000, I'm going to sell you your LinkedIn strategy. I'm going to look at your, look at your profile and fix it up and whatever. For $10,000, I'm going to cold call every HR leader from here to Timbuktu, and you're going to have 9 leads a week coming into your inbox. Now that is some predatory sales BS, right? Because for my customers, not saying anybody else's customers, for my customers, that doesn't work. High volume outreach doesn't work. Why? Because they're selling to VP level and above. And how do those people make decisions? They got a big complex problem to solve. Do you think they're going to their LinkedIn and answering a cold outreach email, even if it says, hey, we have Becky in common. Isn't Becky great? How are you? You want to have a call about my sales program? Like, absolutely freaking not. That is not how high level decision makers are making decisions. So the first thing is know what tactics are going to work. So for my customers, it is not cold calling. It is not endlessly posting to LinkedIn. It is not that. It is relationships. And that can be frustrating because it's like, well, I'm already out here doing the relationship thing. I get my nerve up and I ask people for referrals. I try to speak at conferences, or I go shake a million hands at conferences. Becky and I might share a referral every now and again. I'm doing it. It's not enough. But the problem is usually 2 things. Number 1, you're doing too much activity. You're not really focused on the small number of relationships and opportunities that already exist in your network to go meet your most ideal customers. So first of all, you got to dial that in. We're trying to create a renewable resource of lead channels here. And once you go and meet a lead, the second thing that's missing is an invite. I'm not the first person to say this. I think I read a book by Michael Port years ago or something. There was like one of his strategies was always have an invite. Because if I met you at a conference and I thought you could be a customer of mine, I've got, I think, 3 choices. 1, if I don't want to be a pushy salesperson, I could just exchange business cards with you or get on LinkedIn and then just hope that you're going to have the audacity to reach out and be like, I'd like to know more about your work. I'm going to completely give up all of my, and I don't want to say power because that's not what I need. Opportunity there to help you and guide you.
How many of us sit with yourself and be honest? Because ding, ding, ding. That's what a lot of us do. That's the choice a lot of us pick. We build it and hope they come.
Of course. another thing, I said the mindset piece about I don't want to put work on someone's plate. I have one of my customers very close to my heart said, I'm just so worried that if I even give off the perception that I need business, that I will look not successful and therefore they won't want to do business with me. I'm like, well, there's a catch-22 that we will never get yourself out of. Like, we've got to, that should have sent her directly to you. I don't know what I was thinking. Like, that's a serious mindset issue. So our number one choice is do nothing. Just be cool. Be cool, be a lighthouse. Let all the boats come into you. Wow, that's going to take, I got to meet a lot of Beckys if I think that's how I'm going to fill a pipeline, right? So there's just more work on my plate. That's burnout city. Bad. The second option is to invite them to have a sales conversation, which is gross. Like, unless someone has said, oh my God, Allison, where have you been all my life? You're exactly who I've been looking for. Listen, if they're giving you very clear buying signals, be like, well, I love to hear that. I don't want to be presumptuous, but do you want to take out our calendars and just find a time to actually talk shop? Do that. But if they're not given those buying signals, the minute you try to step into, oh, would you like to talk about my services? You're going to feel out of alignment. They're not going to like it, and it's going to go nowhere. The third option is the one that I like, which is to have an invite. And that is my sales roundtable. So in that moment, maybe I can see something behind your eyes that says, ooh, Allison Davis might be able to help my business, but you're not there yet. And I am not a gross salesperson. So I'm going to say, well, hey, sounds like you got some sales things going on. I convene a group of amazing business owners once a month for a sales roundtable. You can bring your questions or you can just come listen like a podcast and come check it out. I think, hopefully the information will help you, but you're going to like the other people there. And so then they can come month after month until they qualify themselves. It's also a huge time saver for me. Now, the other thing I have to say is that I'm a bit lucky, right? I sell to small business owners. We gather. We know the importance of peer connection and from learning from people that we feel aligned with. My customers are sometimes selling to VPs of $5 to $50 billion corporations. Guess who's not coming to a lunch and learn, folks? So what do their invites look like? You're going to meet these people out in the world powerfully. We got to invite them to something and then sell. Meet, invite, sell. Those invites look different. Those invites can look like a highly curated small dinner of 6 peers who are working at their level. Same things keep them up at night, et cetera, et cetera. Can look like a market research 30-30. May I ask you questions for 30 minutes? I'm going to stick around for another 30. You can borrow my brain on any topic that's keeping you up. There's a whole slew of things. It can be an invite to be on a panel at a big conference. That person might really appreciate that. That's the invite. But we need time to deepen relationship and, even more importantly, if possible, help our potential clients start to apply some of our ethos, some of our beliefs to their own problems and opportunities. They need a little time. If somebody puts a call on my calendar and they've not seen me speak somewhere, they've not come to a sales roundtable, and I'm getting on a sales call with them, I am like, slow down city. This person doesn't know me at all. And if I try to rush and they haven't met me powerfully and they haven't come to an invite and I send them a proposal too soon, I know I will be ghosted. And unfortunately, about once a year, I have to prove that to myself again and again, just to make sure it's still true.
I imagine a lot of us have, but there's another thing that I think so many of us can relate to of like, what went wrong there? And it's probably because of that, of like, they booked the call. I assume they want to buy. So if it didn't happen now, I guess it's not going to happen. And instead of it being like, how do we slow this down? How do we get to know each other? There were so many things you said on there that they haven't met me powerfully. Ooh, that was so good. Love that. To think about, how are you meeting people powerfully? What does that look like? What does that mean for you? The other piece about you're doing a lot of activity. How I think so many of us can relate to doing a lot of activity, but have we slowed down to ask ourselves what's actually working? It makes me think of the Pareto's principle, 80-20 rule, that like 80% of our efforts are only bringing in 20% and the other way around. So like, totally. Where's the 20% of your efforts that actually bring in the 80%? Why are we not focusing more there? Yeah. And then the last thing was the people qualifying themselves. That is so important. And that is what is that longer game. Like I think, and what I tell my clients all the time, and I'm sure you are too, this is a longer play. There's just no way around it. This is not the quick stuff. This is a longer game, but it's going to feel better. And the results are going to probably be much more powerful, more aligned, more perfect fit kind of client. And you're going to be able to do it over the long term.
Yeah.
So
I have to say this. I know I can feel we're trying to wrap up.
Yeah, no,
but I have to say this. And this is where my deep beliefs and convictions about what sales gets to feel like for everybody involved really butts heads with some of that stale pale male crap I'm trying to let go of. Because what I want to say, what I organically wanted to just shout from the rooftops when you said all that about how it's going to take time, what I wanted to say is, so don't wait to start doing it differently. But then we're like, wait, am I urgency? I'm like, bye-bye now today, because you're going to be in pain tomorrow if you don't start now. So there, I don't have the answer to that, my friend. But like, but that I think the job is looking at, what am I saying? Why am I saying it? And I'm saying it because I know the truth, that there are subject matter experts out there who are wrestling with all of this, especially how do I fill my pipeline? How do I sustain this business? And there is organic urgency there, because anything that sounds too good to be true, 100% absolutely is if you are selling services B2B. Do not believe the hype. And it is true that the sooner you start, the better you all feel. So it's like,
I know. Well, I hear you. But there's also, I think, there's urgency that's false urgency, and there's real urgency in this. Like I think about a farmer with a garden, and he could be like, I'm flush with vegetables right now. Everything's blooming. Why would I bother to plant seeds, right? But the truth is, he knows the urgency is those seeds have got to get in the ground, because otherwise I won't have any vegetables in 3 months. So I better, and we can't stop when we're flush planting seeds. That has to be happening all the time. And that is something I see happen. I'm sure you do too. It gets busy. We feel like we don't have time. We let off the gas on sales and marketing. And then we wonder why 6 months later, everything's come to a standstill. So yeah,
it's that roller coaster.
Yeah,
it's the roller coaster. Yeah. I want my clients to find the handful of things that they commit to each year that bring in the exact number of new leads they need. It is possible to figure that out. It takes some innovation. It takes some bravery, but you can figure all of that out. Yeah. And then have an invite. And so if you're always doing that handful of things and you're always have an invite of some kind, that is how the garden, just every season, the right crops come up. I mean, that's how it happens.
I think that's a great point, because you talked about the activity. You can't be planting seeds all the time if you're also doing this and that, right? Like if you're also trying to like be a builder, and you're also trying to be, I'm so bad, I can't even think of trades.
No, but
yeah,
here's what I want to say too. So if one's vision is to grow a company, if that is the vision, does not have to be the vision. Don't get me started on businesses that lead with 7 figures or like whatever. I can't. And even though I was just on a panel about that. Anyway, we do get to a point where we have to pick and choose, right? So if we do have a growth vision, where I'm so happy that a number of my clients have you, is that we have to keep deciding what kind of business we want to have. So when you are successful with lead generation and sales, you then have big decisions to make. Is it time to get out of delivery so that I can double down on the growth if that's what I want to do? What do I want this business to feel like? And I'm so happy to have partners like you for my customers who need to make those really big choices. Because I have to give credit. Even when I said meet people powerfully, I'm like, Michelle Warner is someone that I just think is one of the most brilliant business strategists. And she talks about meeting people powerfully. That is directly from her. And the other thing she says all the time that I share with my clients is sequence over strategy. Don't hire me to help you with sales if you don't know where you want to go. I won't let you, first of all. I'll send you to Becky first, but you know what I mean? So thank you, Becky, for the work that you do with business owners to help them keep choosing what kind of business they want to have, so that when they do make investments in strategists like me, we can really help them drive their vision and where they want to go, because that's where the juice is for all of us. And that's why I'm here doing this work, because we need them so bad.
appreciate you saying that, because I think very often we, especially when we're you talked about those panic moments, or we feel the panic moment coming, we start to think, I just need somebody to tell me how to solve this problem. And we rush to hiring the strategist for sales or marketing or messaging or whatever the thing is, without knowing, because we're setting you up for failure when you don't know what the goal is. Where are we headed? If you have no compass, no direction, you can't point if you don't know where you're going, you can't point them there. And so I understand that sensation. It feels like I don't want to invest in a coach. What are they even going to do for me? Like, I just want somebody who's going to tell me what to do, and then we're going to go do that thing, and they can tell me the exact ROI and all. But it's important work to be thinking about, what is this all for? Because if I don't know what it's all for, then what's the point? So we need to wrap up. We could talk all day, but we are going to have a bonus conversation. That's why I want to make sure we have enough time for that, because I want to talk about referrals. You are amazing with referrals. We've hinted and talked a little bit about referrals in here. So make sure you go subscribe to Feminist Founders newsletter if you haven't already. The bonus conversation this week will be about referrals and building out your referral networking. Let's finish this portion though with having you tell me about a book that you love, maybe around sales, but it also doesn't have to be, that might be helpful for people.
Oh, that is such a great question. People ask me what sales book I should read, and I really have a hard time with that. First of all, I want to say something. I'm not a big reader, but I do want to say that, like, I think it's important to say that, just my neurodivergence and my executive function skills and things, so it's hard, but I brought it. Jill Conrath's Snap Selling. You can see I've got many things tabbed in here. There is no perfect business book. There's no perfect sales book. I don't agree with everything in here. Jill Conrath, I think she sold printers, which I just think is hilarious, right? It's just like, it's so close to Dunder Mifflin and like paper selling. Anyway, but she's really got a lot of great things to say. So many subject matter experts who are selling think that it's going to be the best presentation, the best 1, 2, 3 that's going to win the contract. By the way, that's not always the case, actually. Really smart, savvy buyers know when they're getting a 1, 2, 3. And they don't want that. There are plenty of buyers that I need to give more credit to. And so what Jill Conrath, I think, gets really right, that really cuts to the heart of what a lot of new business owners or subject matter experts 5 or 10 years in even are getting wrong, is that she says sales collateral has no place in sales conversations. No presenting. It is a conversation. She really nails that part. And she says that when we are talking about ourselves, that it needs to be an experience for our customer. And she's right. And that is what I help my clients to engineer. What is the experience you want to give your buyer? So Snap Selling by Jill Conrath, I think, is, if I had to choose a sales book for you, that's what it would be.
All right,
you're meeting everybody.
Yes, I love it. And then an organization that's doing good work in the world that you support or want to highlight.
Oh, first thought, best thought here. I just emailed Animal Kind in Hudson, New York. I'm in the Hudson Valley. In addition to, showing up for humanity, I also have a thing for animals. And so Animal Kind is a cat rescue. Thousands of animals are put to death every day in this country. And yet we still buy designer cats and dogs and things like that. And so Animal Kind in Hudson, New York, if you want to support a small, scrappy, they will never turn you away. They will always pick up the phone and help an animal. That's my local charity that we support.
I also have a soft spot for animals. I was telling you, my dog was in my lap for an hour before we got on the phone. So I get it. And I will make a donation to Animal Kind and ask others to do the same, to say thank you for you generously giving of your time. And everyone, make sure you go subscribe, because we're going to have that bonus conversation about referrals in just a minute, which we'll get this week for the newsletter or subscribers. So thank you, Allison.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Becky. What a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Feminist Founders podcast. If you like what you heard and want to learn more, or if you'd like to support the work that I'm doing with the show, please visit feministfounderspodcast.com. There you can find out about becoming a paid subscriber for as little as the price of 1 cup of coffee a month, which will directly support my work. Thanks again, and I can't wait for our next episode.